Hey guys, welcome to the Human Proof Method podcast, AMA Live. This is all getting streamlined into every format possible. Today I'm with a special guest. We've got Nick Loper here from the Side Hustle Nation show. Perhaps you've heard of him. Nick, do you want to maybe give an introduction about yourself and yeah, just introduce yourself to the HPD family?
You bet. Well, thanks for having me. So, like Kelvin said, I host the Side Hustle Show podcast at sidehustlenation.com. Really, it's about, figuring out how to earn, how to make money outside of your day job, whether that's, driving for Uber all the way up to, running in some cases some pretty serious businesses that are a little bit more time leveraged and everything in between. So, lots of fun. Talk about productivity stuff. Talk about investing and talk about entrepreneurship from a bootstrap standpoint.
Very cool. Very cool. So since you're the side hustle guy, I think a lot of people are going to be interested into how you came about this business. I think the Side Hustle Nation is probably your largest property, probably is your full-time gig at this point, I think. But feel free to enlighten us and how you got to that stage.
It is. It's become the main focus over the years. It started as a side project from the the business that I was running at the time, which started as a side project to my day job, which was a footwear comparison shopping site. So back in the day, nowadays everyone kind of starts their product search on Amazon, but back in the day, people would start their product search on Google, and you'd find comparison sites like Price Grabber or Next Tag, right? And they would tell you where you could find the best deal on whatever product you were looking for. So I built shoesrus.net was the original iteration of this horrible. You can go in the Wayback Machine and look at the site. And then the more recent version was called shoesniper.com. And it would just pull in the catalogs from Zappos, from Amazon, from all these different stores and tell you where you could find the best price on a pair of shoes and collect a commission on sales that came through the site.
Very cool. So that sounds like it doesn't sound like the usual 2018 uh, affiliate site, I would say. This was an affiliate site, right? I think you said.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
how that one worked, very, very thin content. In fact, got slapped by AdWords a couple times for having thin content because it was just, it was all data driven or data feed driven. It's like we're going to pump in these catalogs and try to spit back out a relevant comparison algorithm to show people where they can find the best price. And to do that for maybe 400,000 products at its peak, it was like, you can't write unique content for every one of those pages. So it was all a lot of template driven stuff and drove the majority of traffic with AdWords.
Okay. Very cool. Did you do that yourself? Was that it sounds like there's probably some hard coded stuff going on there. It's not if it's not content based, right? So there's a lot of code.
Yeah, I had to hire some developers to get that done. So before that, I started doing like direct link text ads with AdWords, and I started, with a budget of like $1 a day because it was like, still in college and trying to figure this stuff out, linking to shoes, specific models of shoes with my affiliate link in AdWords, and was able to validate, okay, people are buying these products. The way that I reasoned to scale that up would be to build a site out because it was a pain in the butt to the prices kept updating and like stuff would go out of stock. And, to try and scale it, the reasoning was like, okay, let's build a site and I'll update automatically and it'll be great. And it's like, well, sometimes that worked and other times it didn't, but it's a little bit of a challenge to maintain it.
Okay. How long did you work on that one for?
So started doing the direct linking stuff like in 2004, 2005. Contracted to have the site built summer of 2005 and ended up going live sometime 2006, probably spring 2006, and ran it until 2014.
Wow. That's an impressively long amount of time
It
for
had a good run. So I naively thought like especially, at the time, so 3 years into it, I was like quitting my job, like, okay, I'm gonna sell shoes full time. Like this could be my thing. And like I didn't really realize at that time because it had just been, sunshine and unicorns that like, okay, bad things can happen. You're gonna have some dips and some hurdles in this business. And like it's probably not gonna last forever. It's rare to see companies like Coke and Ford that have been around for, 100 plus years where in the internet it's like a business model that works today might not work tomorrow. And I don't know. I struggle to adapt a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the age of, now that it's 2018 here, we might be opening up a wormhole maybe a little too early here, but I'm going to ask it. I'm going to ask it just because I'm interested in it personally. But like, what would you do differently then to that site? Would you have
So,
started it, or would you just
oh,
left it open?
absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
we sold probably millions of dollars worth of shoes. I tried to add it up once, but like 15, $20 million worth of shoes. Like, so helped a ton of people, made an awesome living for a long time. And, and it was the vehicle that let me quit my job. Like it exposed me to like this entire online world. So like absolutely no regrets there. A couple of things I would have done differently, hire help faster. Like I had a hard time getting out of my own way, and trusting somebody else to to not steal my idea, to not screw things up, to not whatever, just for every reason, just like had a hard time letting go. And the second thing that would have allowed me to kind of scale up faster to get while the getting's good, because with the hindsight, like, okay, it's not going to last forever, like let's put the pedal to the metal when you can. And then the second thing, what would have been taking the profits from paid traffic and reinvesting in organic. That was something that I never really did, or very did kind of half-heartedly, and it never really saw any traction, never really took off. So I actually just talked to Renee Delgado, who runs BounceHouseStore.com, like a drop shipping site selling these giant, multi-thousand-dollar commercial inflatable bounce houses. And that was kind of his model, like paid traffic first and then investing that in organic, investing that in SEO.
Yeah, that I think that makes a lot of sense. I was listening to a podcast a while back, and it was with I think it was the founder of Tuft and something. It was a mattress. It's a mattress company
Oh,
basically.
Tuft
They
and
sell
Needle. Yeah.
Yeah, Tuft and Needle. Yeah, it's an amazing story. I'd never heard of their mattresses before, but apparently they're doing around $250 million a year.
Holy
So
crap. It's a lot of
yeah,
mattresses.
yeah, quite impressive. But I think that for his final, the final piece of advice, which I'm sure I'll ask you at the end of this interview too. But his final piece of advice was that you want to know whether or not something is working right away.
Yeah.
That's like that was his business lesson right there, and that's how PPC is one of those things that's going to help you do that, right? So
It's
let's
powerful. Like we should add too, like for a brand new site, as ugly as it was, like to be able to get in front of searchers for the exact keywords they were targeting. Like I thought it was the coolest. I mean, it's the coolest advertising service in the world. To be able to compete for the top of the search results. And since the pages were all heavily monetized with affiliate products, it was profitable from day one.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's quite interesting. The Google keyword type of PPC is, it's the core. It's kind of like the bottom of the funnel, essentially, right? For a lot of cases. Quora.com recently opened up their platform as well for advertising, and obviously they're a kind of like a keyword question and answer type
Oh,
of model
interesting.
there. So
Okay, I didn't know that.
yeah, I don't know if it's cheap, but it's probably worth looking into.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, they rank really well in Google, so if AdWords is too expensive, maybe that's a way to backdoor some of those Google searchers.
Yeah, exactly, right. But don't tell anyone else that.
Okay.
Let's. I'm actually really curious. So you've got right now you've got Side Hustle Nation going on, and with your previous shoe affiliate site that has had its run. I'm assuming you sold that. What's going on now, kind of for you in that world of portfolio sites and stuff like that.
Sure, sure. So, well, I wish I had the foresight to sell it. Should have sold it a few years before. Kind of like, ultimately, like died just like this slow, painful decline. And there were some months where like my virtual assistant would be making more than me, and just like we tried to like 80/20 the crap out of everything, and it was not. This was not where it needed to be, because it had been going for almost 10 years, right? So the during that time the pay-per-click ad costs had gone up significantly, and meanwhile like commissions were getting cut on the other side, so just kind of getting squeezed in the middle there. But on the side from the shoe site, thankfully, like as a serial side hustler, right, like had a couple other projects that I started. Most of those have died a quiet death in the corner of the internet, but a couple of them are still around. One is an outsourcing directory and review site, kind of like Yelp for virtual assistants or Yelp for virtual assistant companies, that started in 2011. And then in 2013 started the Side Hustle Nation blog and podcast. So those are really the two main focuses right now. And I can't even think, like there's a couple other sites. I bought a site from Empire Flippers like in 2014, 2015, and then some algorithm update wiped it out. There's some other smaller sites that I think are still live, but they don't really do anything in terms of revenue.
Yeah, for sure. Those algorithm updates are pretty serious things. We get the Empire Flippers newsletter and stuff like that as well for us. So we see that kind of stuff, and we do buy sites from them um, as well as building our own sites too from the ground up. But it's kind of nice sometimes to buy a site that's already making some income. But right now too, there was a current algorithm update that's shaken up a lot of people's sites. So if you're in the market for a site at the moment, you might want to hold back while things kind of settle themselves so that you can see how those revenues are looking, right?
Okay, I haven't
Um,
heard about what is this update targeting?
um, to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked too deep into it. It hasn't affected anything that I've noticed, but I'm sure that I've definitely read, at least in our private Facebook group, that there have been some people hurt by it. I think it has a lot to do with some money content. So if people have too much money content over info content, then they've been hit with I don't know what you call it. They always, I don't know what animal they're going to call it this time, but
Yeah,
yeah,
down the zoo.
exactly. I'm actually quite interested in this outsourcing website that you were talking about. I'm always interested in the Side Hustle Nation site because I've found you there too
Sure.
through some Google searches. But with the outsourcing site, that's a little bit different, right, than what it sounds like from what we do. Especially how you angled it. You said it's kind of like the Yelp of outsourcing, so it's probably review based and stuff like that. Um, I guess in the way that we build sites, we usually do the best X or best X for Y, something like that,
Okay.
and that's our usual strategy and for ranking in Google and stuff like that. But it sounds like with your site, you have a lot of content that's driven by users and by reviews and stuff like that. How does that work for your organic traffic? Like, is that the main play for that site?
Yeah, it's actually worked really well. So it started out from my own experience in looking for a VA and trying to figure out uh, originally not fully understanding like, okay, this is a legit option, because I was like, well, there's a community college around the corner from us, like maybe I could post an ad over there. I need some help, maybe I need an intern, but like where are they going to work? I don't really want them coming to sit at my kitchen table. And it's like, well, I guess the developers that I hired were remotely, or they worked remotely. Maybe I could hire just like a remote ads assistant or a remote admin type of person. And then went down the rabbit hole of like all these different companies. Half a dozen of them are in 4-hour work week, and the industry is way broader, and it's grown too since 2011, of all the different services that are out there. And so what I would do, I would go on Twitter to see like who was talking about them, and then I would like tweet these people back like, hey, would you leave a review for me, like if you liked it, if you hated it, I don't care, I just want this user generated content. And now there, I don't even know, probably a couple thousand reviews on the site, so it's been really cool. So even if the article itself is 1,000 words, you might have another 1,000 or 2,000 in the comments, which has been, I think, really powerful for Google.
Okay. So do you still target the usual keywords? Like, let's say it's like the company review. Is that normally the keyword that you're going for? Or is it just like the brand name itself?
Usually the review content.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. How much
Sometimes it ends up ranking for the company name itself, which upsets some of the companies if people aren't happy with them. But what are you going to do?
yeah, well that's what Google is favoring, right? It's saying that more people are clicking on the review because it's a review from a third party source. What's the traffic like on that site? If you if you want to share some revenue numbers, I would be probably ecstatic to hear that kind of stuff too. I think a lot of the viewers would as well.
Sure. Let me. I can bring up my analytics right now because it's been a minute since I've looked at it. But the site makes money in three ways. There's some like display advertising, mostly sidebar, but also like this year I've added a kind of a featured listing to the directory. Um, People call me up on Clarity, so there's like a sidebar like, hey, if you want to talk virtual assistants, we can do that. And then the primary revenue driver is like lead gen deals with the companies themselves. So they'll pay for introducing new customers for them, basically like an affiliate site.
Okay, so it's on an acquisition CPA, I guess, CPA offer there.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, actually. That's quite a few streams of revenue. I think not a lot of people are willing to really be that authority on their site as well. So you're offering the Clarity FM conversations, which is which is pretty neat at the end of the day because it's really no stress off your back, right? They book a little bit of your time at whatever rate that you say that you'd like to put it up there, and you're obviously the expert. So they call like what? How many of those calls do you get?
Not a lot, maybe a couple a month. So not a lot of people take me up on it, but it's there as an option, and it's in the signature of the email list, like the autoresponder and stuff that goes out. So a few come in through there, but I think it's set to $200 or $300 an hour. So I'm
Oh
like,
wow,
okay, I'll take those calls.
yeah, any day, any day. This featured listing that you had mentioned as well, is that kind of like a sponsored post, almost like a sponsored listing on the site?
Yeah, so a bunch of companies have reached out over the years and said like, can we just pay you to like be at the top? And I was like, no, it's like a review site. You got to earn it. For a long time, I said that, and then enough people asked. I was like, well, let's just test it out and see if it makes any impact. Um, and and so far they've kept renewing. So I guess I didn't charge enough for it. So that's right now just the one listing, but it could be an interesting way to kind of expand some revenue on pretty much autopilot from here on out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Google has, I think they have like three ads at the
Yeah,
top sometimes. So, it's if they can do it, then there's no reason why you couldn't do it, especially
yeah,
if the audience is way more targeted too, right? If
yeah.
they're
Just taking a page out of their playbook. Even Yelp and stuff will have sponsored listings at the top, and it's just hey, let's give it a shot. And so far, I haven't gotten any pushback or any negative feedback on it. The site doesn't get the site doesn't get much traffic. I'm just looking that up for the sake of sharing. So I'm at like 17,000 uniques over the last 30 days. So it's like a really low traffic site, but it's pretty targeted, the people that do end up coming there.
I think there'd be quite a few people that would want 17,000 people coming to their site, right? So it's not small by it's not not like the penny hoarder
Right.
getting.
You compare it to some of these huge sites where it's like, well, I got a million page views. Like it's not like that at all.
Yeah, yeah, spending like $10,000 a day on sponsored posts. It's not sponsored posts, promoted posts on
Facebook
Facebook.
ads.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, very cool, very cool. So let me see. What is actually? I do have a question. So Dom Wells, who's who's our CEO at HVD, he wanted to submit a question. He actually asked about how your business looks right now on in terms of the operational side. So you have a whole site dealing with virtual assistants and stuff like that. So it sounds like you've got a lot of help, or at least you're fairly experienced in that. How does your team look basically?
Sure, sure. It's constantly evolving, but let me show you kind of what the virtual assistant stack looks like today. So, first line of defense is a service called OK Relax. It's a general virtual assistant service that runs on a task basis. So I think you can get 25 tasks a month, 25 or 30 tasks a month from a dedicated assistant for I think $100 is the current pricing. Um, I've been with them for probably 3 years. Very cool service. So, um, dedicated person. She's got access to WordPress. She's got access to lead pages. She's got access to ActiveCampaign. Um, whereas I have a non-dedicated service that I use as well called Fancy Hands, um, where you wouldn't want to share uh, access to all that stuff because it's like there might be 1,000 different people who would have access to it. So I like OK Relax. She does she does research. She does a lot of research for the VA site. Actually, she does like article formatting. She does like for the Side Hustle Show podcast. She's the one like installing the lead magnets and integrating those with lead pages and stuff. She runs some like Kindle book sales reports, just like some ongoing, weekly tasks. It's been helpful on that front, and then kind of like ad hoc projects as they come up. The Fancy Hands service, they kind of like respond to emails on my behalf, like based on this input, here's your list of options. Like choose which one makes the most sense. They do some proofreading sometimes. They check in for flights sometimes. Just another line of defense there. I use a not really tech support, but like a WordPress maintenance service called ZenWP. I've been with them for a couple of years. It's kind of like website maintenance, where if something breaks, or if you need to make a tweak and you don't want to deal with it yourself, you just send them a note. They've actually been really responsive. They've been helping fix the Side Hustle Nation homepage on mobile because it was just looked kind of funky with the images. Um, what else? That's three. I have a dedicated assistant just for Pinterest, who her sole job is to drive traffic from Pinterest. So she kind of manages like the scheduling and Tailwind, and I think that's about it. And send me some analytics on that. Um, I have a writer, a dedicated freelance writer who does the podcast summaries and then actually writes a lot of the content for the VA site. He does the show notes on Side Hustle Nation too, so that's a helpful one. And then there's a podcast editor. There's like a dedicated service for the Amazon ads. Like what's missing, or maybe what's the next step, is kind of like a project manager or like an editor in chief role, or like a true executive assistant type of role.
When you actually say the Amazon ads, what do you mean by that? What are you referring to?
So for Kindle or for self-publishing, there's they launched a service last year, the year before, called AMS, Amazon Marketing Services, where this has actually been really important to kind of keep books selling, keep the sales rank up, where you can on book sales pages, they have a carousel that's like, people who bought this also bought this. Well, they kind of quietly added another row that looks the same, except it's like sponsored products related to this book. Um, and so you can like have your book show up on your exact competitors' pages or books you think are complementary to yours. It's been a really cool way and a profitable way to drive continued traffic, continued book sales from people who are already shopping on Amazon.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I it's funny because I've been aware of you for quite a while, right? I've listened to a ton of Side Hustle Nation shows, but so I actually even myself I forget like how many products and streams of revenue that you probably have coming to you, which is pretty interesting, right?
Well, I mean, not all of them are huge, but it's kind of a fun. I mean, it's fun to like learn about something usually through the podcast and then go test it out and share the results. Or, you talk to somebody and you're like, well, crap, I could do that. Which is maybe detrimental too. It's like, they're chasing different shiny objects. But I mean, that's part of what's fun is, the different experiments and seeing what works, what doesn't, and trying to trying to keep it all straight.
Yeah, I hear you. I think I came across your strategy for Pinterest, probably through a Google search, I think, actually. So I was aware
Okay.
of you before, but when you see the brand, which is helpful, then
All right,
you
my
just,
my SEO is working. Okay.
oh, yeah, it worked on me. So took that. I think you took that. That was a lesson though. It was basically a case study post that you had written up about driving traffic to Pinterest and stuff like that. So we actually do themes of content each month for our audience. So right now this is the month about content and stuff like that. And then we also so last month we did I think we did keywords, and then this month we're doing content, and then next month I think we're going to do social media as well. So I think
Okay.
Pinterest is going to play a huge part in that. So I think I want to dip our toes a little bit into that as well
Let's
with
do it.
Pinterest. Um, how much traffic are you getting from Pinterest in comparison to your organic traffic?
So for Side Hustle Nation, that's the only site that we're driving Pinterest traffic to. It's generally been in the ballpark of like 8,000 visits a month, which pales in comparison to the SEO traffic, but it's the way it was described to me, and credit where credit is due. Like I borrowed all of this from Rosemary Groner, who runs busybudgeter.com, kind of like a frugal living, budgeting type of site. And she was like, "What? You're not doing Pinterest?" I was like, No, I know nothing about Pinterest. Like, teach me your ways, right?" And she just laid it all out, where it's the argument that she made is like it's a search engine for content, just like Google is a search engine for content. Um, but it's primarily visually driven. I mean, you get some metadata in your description and your kind of title, but think of it that way, right? So if you have content that you think somebody might be looking for on Pinterest, and of course know that the audience skews female, and the types of content they might want to discover there, and there's opportunity for it to go viral in a way that is less likely on Google, because people like can save that to their board and their friends see that, or they could save it to a group board and people could see that. The group board strategy that she shared, this was back kind of end of 2015, beginning of 2016, is probably not as effective today. So that strategy was, join, even if you don't have any followers, or if you have just like, enough to make your profile look like, okay, somebody's trying, which I had less than 100 followers when I started. But join these group boards, because then it doesn't matter how many followers you have, because, all of a sudden, if you can pin to this group board, then everybody who's following the group board can see your stuff. It's like, oh, this is a fantastic shortcut. And so you join all these group boards. Some of them have 10,000, 20,000 followers, and they can see your stuff. It was a good way to shortcut. It seems like there's been some algorithm updates in Pinterest where that's been diminished a little bit, but still driving traffic. And so we've prioritized the posts that have affiliate opportunities, or have like some sort of conversion opportunity, where since I'm paying a VA to drive that traffic, it's like, got to make it worthwhile.
Okay, very cool. Do you have an example of a post that let's say performs well when you're saying driving traffic to a monetized post? This is a monetized post on Side Hustle Nation, right? Is this? I don't think you really do like straight reviews, at least not that I've seen, but maybe you do. So Would be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, I haven't yet. Let me see. I'm trying to get you some numbers on Pinterest. Yeah, so right around 8,000 visits in the last 30 days. So one of the popular pins from last year was pointing to a podcast episode that we did on merch by Amazon, where this woman had made 50 grand selling print on demand t-shirts on Amazon. Like no inventory, just upload a file, Amazon, you know, prints it and ships the shirt to the customer on your behalf. And because that was a hot side hustle last year, it still is a hot side hustle. That pin, I think, ranks relatively well for merch by Amazon if people are searching that in Pinterest. And so that's an example of showing up in Pinterest search. And there's like a viral element to it as well. And so that isn't a monetized post, but it has a content upgrade. And I think that that content upgrade has, you know, I'm going to give you the exact number, but like hundreds and hundreds of opt-ins.
No, that's yeah, that's pretty impressive, right? The one thing I like about Pinterest is that it can take a little bit, I would say, to get going. You know, you have to really put in consistent effort into the platform before Pinterest starts to really like your stuff. But then I really feel like there's some long tail residual traffic as well, because once people start sharing things, it's just like it's got the ability to become a little bit more viral over there than let's say on Facebook.
Yeah, it's a much longer lifespan, right? You post something to Facebook, you see this spike, and then it dies off. With Pinterest, it's a little bit more evergreen. You still get those little bit of viral spikes if something hits, but it seems to be more steady. So I just looked this up. Over 5,000 opt-ins for that merch, on that merch post. So definitely a worthwhile little pin graphic to make and to keep it spinning with the Tailwind software.
Yeah, no, I do know that that's a pretty hot topic. We use Tailwind as well. We have a module inside of our course that talks all about that as well. It's just and it's fairly similar to yours, just because I mean everybody uses Tailwind mostly, right? And now that they've got the Pinterest tribes, it's very interesting. Um, I want to take a step back actually and talk a little bit about the process that you have for your content on Side Hustle Nation. So you got this. I think probably the podcast drives maybe the majority of your traffic. I'm not really sure, but I'm really keen on understanding a little bit more about how Side Hustle Nation works from kind of like the metrics point of view, and then yeah, let's just start there because I think that'll be interesting.
Yeah, this was surprising to me in terms of the podcast versus the blog, because I thought of myself as a writer first. I'd been blogging on a personal domain for probably 4 years before starting, before at least switching brands or really starting to focus down. And the podcast was kind of like an afterthought. But within the first year, that grew 3 times faster. It's like, okay, let's focus a little more energy over here because I think it's a deeper connection. Somebody's going to spend 30, 40 minutes with you in their earbuds, and they're going to do it, week after week. Like that's a pretty powerful connection versus, okay, I'm going to spend, 2 minutes like skimming your blog post for the H2s and looking at like the image captions and stuff. It's so that's kind of like blog versus podcast. Today the podcast reaches 25,000 people a week, whereas I could hit publish on a new post and 1,000, 2,000 visits, like just driving traffic from an email list, and the email list is like 60,000 people. It's like until you hit something that ranks in either Google or Pinterest, like it can be tough to drive traffic to written content. So the written content stuff has the strategy there has really changed over time, where it's becoming given that the podcast has such outsized results in terms of reach, I've been much more intentional about creating written content with strategic intent based on keyword research, based on whether I think it can rank, based on whether it can be monetized based on like, okay, how, before you sit down to write something, before I would just like, oh, write whatever I want to write about. Now it's much more like, okay, how is this going to perform for me? Like, how is this going to be worth my while to spend the time to create? Um, and that's resulted in fewer posts or less frequent posts, but it's resulted in more and I think better guest content. Like if somebody has a unique side hustle that I don't know anything about, like I will welcome that onto the site. And some example just from like the past couple of years, somebody wrote a site about like flipping, rare limited edition sneakers that ranks really well. Somebody wrote a similar post on like flipping cars. There were only like 4,000 words on like how to flip cars. It's like, this is fantastic. So it ranks really well in Google. Somebody wrote like, how do I start a tutoring business that ranks really well. Um, Somebody wrote a review of like Mechanical Turk. Like all of that stuff brings in a ton of traffic to the site, but I don't have to write it. And so that's, and these guys are getting traffic from it too, because like of all the page views that it's generating, and they're getting traffic from like their byline stuff. That's what's been going on lately in terms of content, just trying to be, a little bit more cognizant of like, okay, what does Ahrefs say? What does the search volume say? Like, is there any chance of ranking for this?
That's pretty interesting. It's cool to hear the evolution of your strategy, just because you know that the people that know you, kind of probably, that will attend any of the webinars or whatever products that you're going to put out as well. They're probably coming from the podcast mostly, just because that's the majority of your traffic, it sounds like. But then you've also got this strategy that you lay as a foundation almost, where you're hosting all of these other bloggers to come and get access to your email list as well. But then you're getting, a ton of subject matter experts to come in and just, really own that keyword a lot better than probably you could do it.
Yeah, so it looks like, just 3 or 4 out of the top 10 or 15 posts are, at least in the last 30 days, are guest posts. So, if you're not the world's foremost expert on this stuff, like, I'll definitely welcome killer guest content.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, since it is content marketing month, it's very interesting. And I personally didn't always have a clear definition between content marketing and SEO. They are kind of, brother and sister. They're related and stuff like that, but they also are fairly different. One thing that I had a conversation with, which I'd be interested in hearing whether or not you've experienced this before, but depending on the niche and what you're doing, sometimes you want to go for a keyword, but when you do your research for that keyword, and if you are a subject matter expert, you look at it and you think to yourself, wow, this stuff is all wrong. But Google has, made up their mind, because they're, everyone else is saying the same stuff back and forth, and no one really knows what everyone thinks this is the right answer, but you have a different opinion, and you're trying to convey that in your content. But unfortunately, if you do your keyword research in the proper way, and you don't necessarily include those factors that are inside of all of the other posts that are also ranking well over there, then
Yeah.
you almost have to agree with them, even though it's not necessarily true, right? That's kind of the funny thing about Google and the whole SEO space in a way, right? Has that ever happened to you, like where you just strongly disagreed with something, but you just had to rank for that?
I probably, I don't know, I probably could. So I was really inspired by a conversation with Matt Giovanisi. He runs swimuniversity.com. He runs brewcabin.com, like this portfolio of like, really authoritative sites, really well-designed sites. And he said, look, everybody talks about like going after these like little piddly long tail search terms. He's like, I'm going to go after, how to take care of your pool, or like pool care, or, French press, or these big, or I was like, he had a coffee site, I think he sold it, but like how to homebrew or homebrewing, like that would be his like primary keyword. He's like, so I look at that and I'm inspired to write the best resource on the planet for that keyword, and trust that ultimately that's where Google wants to go. Like, I'm not going to sweat it about link building. I'm not going to, sweat about trying to build a PBN. I'm going to just create the absolute best thing that I can for on that topic, and trust that over time, like, it's going to start, getting traffic. And so I was really inspired by that, like going after not the long tail, but going after the short tail, like of, where are the eyeballs really at? And because like by doing so, you start to rank at least first for some of those long tail terms that you have as H2s, or those LSI words that you have as H2s in that post. So I'm trying to play around a little bit with that, and see where that goes.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. A while back, I wrote a post on human proof designs, and basically it just talked about how the really big guys, let's say Brian Dean, and we'll put Pat Flynn up there. They don't care about their competition.
Yeah.
Because they just have their eyes set on this specific keyword, and that's, I mean, at this point they don't, they have the the domain authority to really push through there, but they didn't always have that. So I'm pretty keen on the idea that even though a lot of these people, they do talk about long tail stuff, it's very clear that they don't concentrate on long tail keywords. They only go for the fat head, I think it's called too. And like, yeah, it's amazing that Brian Dean, he only has on backlinko.com, I think he only has like 32 posts on his site.
Right. Yeah, he's not getting, super deep into the weeds on, these obscure strategies. He's going for like SEO ranking or Google ranking factors, like, how to build backlink, like, monster topics that a bunch of people are looking for.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then writing 10,000 words on that topic.
Yeah, exactly. Right. If you have all day to do that, then yeah, maybe it would work. But I still definitely think though, if you're going to start a site from scratch, then going for these long tail keywords makes the most sense. I'm not sure if you've heard of the keyword golden ratio either, but yeah, it's something that we talk about. Basically, it's where we look at search terms, we look at keywords that have low results inside of Google. So you know how you can see, you can do like the modifier all in title. So we look for articles that are targeting that specific keyword, and then looking at how much supply basically there is that Google has. And then from there we just we write articles. There's a bit of a formula I can share with you. We can share it in the notes and stuff like that. But
so not necessarily looking just at volume and keyword difficulty, but looking at like, okay, how many people, how big is the ocean to swim in here?
Yeah, exactly. We look at search volume and stuff like that too. But yeah, it is really about supply at the end of the day too, because if there's less supply, just like in any other market dynamic, then if your content really deserves to be there and it's very, very targeted to that, then hopefully you should be getting at least, if not to the second page, then hopefully to the first page with that. Since you've gotten all these projects, you've gone through your whole life, the whole Side Hustle Nation brand is built around so many different ways of generating revenue, whether it's online or not. But I think, like, I used to listen to your show quite a bit, and I think to be honest with you, I've stopped a little bit. I listen to some here and there, to be honest with you, when I see a nice title pop up. But you know what it is though? It's just because I'm trying to avoid shiny object syndrome. If I'm listening to your podcast, like every episode, I'm just like, oh, I want to try that. I want to try this. I want to try that. And I'm I don't know what it would be like to be you, but I guess you've either got strong words of advice against how to combat shiny object syndrome, or you're just fully embracing it.
It's dangerous, right? And that's like kind of the mark of a good episode, when I hang up being like, okay, I could totally do that. I'm definitely trying that out. So it's a balance between that and trying to create content that has other people saying that, and heads down. Okay, that's maybe great for somebody else, but like that's not my focus right now.
Yeah. Okay. So then you have the ability to just say, well, it's the one thing, right? I guess.
Right. That's not my one thing right now. Maybe another time, but yeah, it's hard to do because sometimes people are excellent presenters and still like I mean that's kind of the fun of it too. Is like learning from these people. Sometimes these people charge $1,000 an hour for consultation or coaching, and you get to pick their brain for 45 minutes. Like you'd almost be dumb not to take that advice and run with it. So
Yeah.
there's definitely some call it shiny object syndrome or just call it like taking action and implementing what you learn.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, in a way I am kind of jealous of that just because you can hear the different strategies that other people are applying, and if it's, if you can kind of grab the best parts, then you've basically saved yourself, reading an entire book just to grab a tiny portion of what could actually work for your own business.
Yeah, and even if it's like, okay, I'm not gonna completely do what they did, but like there's some, marketing element or there's some, strategy that they use. Okay, I can tweak that to my own purposes. That's kind of where the fun stuff comes in.
Cool. We've got a few minutes left here before I let you go, but I was wondering, we've got some listener questions from the HPD side and also from your own from the Side Hustle Nation as well. So I was
Okay,
wondering if you'd be prepared for this.
sure. Let's give them a shot.
Cool. So Carl is asking how many weeks how many hours do you put into your affiliate sites, and how long did it take for you to make a consistent $500 a month?
That's a tough one. So for for the shoe business, it was 9 months almost of development. Where the developers said, okay, it's going to take 3 months, and like any software project, it ran long, and thankfully they stuck to their fixed price bid. Um, that probably started earning $500 a month as soon as it launched, or shortly thereafter, because it was going off paid traffic. For the VA site, that's always been a very part-time project, so maybe you know probably a little bit more, but these days 4 or 5 hours a week spent on that. Like Wednesday mornings is my time to spend on that site. It was probably at the $500 a month level after a year or two, probably closer to two. Like I was excited when I saw any commissions come through at all on that site. And then for the side hustle site, the first thing I sold was a private mastermind group with me, and sold that maybe 7 or 8 months after launch. And again, like due to the connective power of the podcast, I don't think I would have sold any seats to that without the relationship built from the podcast.
Okay, very cool. So it sounds like even with this Side Hustle Nation combined with all of those uh, major projects that you have, the Side Hustle Nation has grown at least the fastest. And it sounds like you've got revenue the quickest from it too.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, and it's the most fun to work on, so that's helpful too.
Yeah, for sure. A face on a brand is always is always nice, right? We even with HPD, we have portfolio sites and stuff like that, and we even we have some paid products and things like that. But we prefer to kind of stay a little bit behind the scenes and stuff like. But so we're not able to generate as much income from those sites that are producing a product, just because our faces aren't on it. And we're running this. This is the Human Proof Designs is very similar in the fact that we spend the majority of our time also on this project.
Yeah.
So Neil and Carl actually asked the question as well, which is if your site is getting no traffic, what steps would you take to get some?
So probably three things to consider. The first is, are you writing about stuff that people are actively searching for? And is the stuff that you're writing the best resource on the planet for that topic, right? So if you can answer yes to all that stuff and you're still not getting traffic, then it's time to, go on to items 2 and 3, which would be, finding people who are, seeking information about this on other forums like Quora. You mentioned would be a good place to start. Like a friend of mine has generated like millions of views to his answers on Quora, which has translated into traffic to his site, translated into book sales, translated into coaching calls, just because he was dedicated and said, okay, I'm going to spend half an hour a day answering questions on personal development on Quora. Somebody else took a similar tactic on medium.com. Like, okay, I'm going to share my writing on medium.com because there's a site that already has traffic and specifically targeting publications on Medium. I don't know if that's still a viable thing. This was a year ago, where if you're that if your writing is that good and resonates with people there, you can drive people back to your site with some call to action through that. He sold a course and made $6,000 or something, within his first few months of a blogger by leveraging the audience on Medium. And then the third thing would be to look at the social platforms like Pinterest and say, okay, is this something? And not all niches are good for this, but is this something that somebody might be looking for on Pinterest? How can I create the visual content and the compelling in a compelling way to drive people back to the site that way?
Yeah, very cool. I think we've been trying to we've been doing a little bit of work on Quora as well, and we tried Medium, but we couldn't crack Medium.
Yeah, I wasn't able to get anything from there either. I never put like a super concerted effort to it, but it is a cool, especially for like thoughtful writing. My stuff is a little more tactical, but I've seen people do well.
Yeah, I know. I hear you though. And I think about it like this too. I think, oh, we've got Medium and we've got Quora and stuff like that, but then we also have Pinterest. And personally, I prefer Pinterest a lot more just because it's a way more automated thing that you can implement and still get like very, very, very good results. Let's
Like people will be going on like for the sake of Pinterest, people will be going on like specifically looking for certain topics. Whereas on Medium, maybe they just have it set as their homepage or whatever, and or they scroll through the stories like in the morning. And so it's trying to think of like user intent and how do I get in front of those users, like where they're going to be looking for my stuff.
yeah, that's very true. Actually, that's very, very true. Let's see. We've got, oh, so Jolene has actually asked a pretty important question, I think, as well, is when do you know it's time to quit a project?
When you come to dread the work. So, pulled the plug on the shoe business, pulled the plug on, several different businesses when you come to dread the work, when you're just not seeing the results, you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, it's not fun anymore. There's just, those are all kind of the indicators for me. Now, on the flip side of that is kind of the motivation, what keeps you going. And for me, it's like, you know, doing something that's fun, getting thank yous from customers and listeners or readers and listeners, and seeing results, even if they're just a few dollars, or that initial trickle of traffic or revenue or email signups, however you want to measure, what metrics you want to track at the beginning, but like getting to those results milestones as quickly as you can help kind of keep the motivation going.
Very cool. Makes a lot of sense. I think one of the lessons too, at least from this entire conversation, is that when you put your face on things, you've got a lot more to worry about, but you can also do a much better job if you're very, very committed to it.
That's probably the common denominator for the projects I've had that have done well and the ones that have flopped. The ones that have flopped have been like, I'm trying to be anonymous, I'm trying to be behind the scenes, I'm trying to write stuff that I really have no business writing about, and the stuff where it's like, no, this is me, this is my experience. And those are the ones that have done well.
Yeah, and it doesn't apply to just like the make money online space either, right? Like people have gardening sites where they're experts in it,
Yeah.
that are that are have driving tons of traffic to best garden shears or something. I've got one more question for you, and then I'll let you I'll let you go.
That's a good affiliate product. Okay.
Well, this is a personal one. So, what's your favorite book or blog?
Book or blog? The most impactful book that I've read recently is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. That's kind of had me revamp actually the entire homepage of Side Hustle Nation. So the story brand premise is, set your customer up as the hero and set yourself up as the guide. And so he gives the example of Star Wars. Luke has Yoda, he has Obi-Wan to kind of like guide him on this journey, rather than as a brand positioning yourself as the hero that comes in and saves the day. It's like, no, the customer wants to be the hero. And it's like, okay, that was an interesting way of looking at things. So trying to flipped around the homepage and the language as a result of that. I'm trying to think of other ones. Actually, one that kind of solidified a mindset shift was The Go Giver by Bob Berg, which is really about being helpful first and then figuring out the monetization second, or like, allowing yourself to be open to the monetization second. So rather than, starting projects for the sake of making money, starting projects for the sake of like, okay, I think I can help somebody here, and I know there'll be money down the road.
Very interesting. Very interesting. When you mentioned Donald, what's his name? Donald Miller, I think you
Yeah.
said. I'm actually reading his book right now. Not that
Okay.
one. I'm reading I think it's called 1,000 years in 100. I don't know, 1,000 miles in 100 years or something like that.
Okay.
Um,
Is it
but
good?
yeah, it's all right. It's all right. It's about him. It's about him. Uh, he just released a successful book. I'm not sure what book it is because I haven't been exposed to him as an author yet. It was recommended. It's been sitting in my wish list actually for a while, but it's about some film producers coming up to him and asking him to make a movie about his life, and then it goes through the process of him editing his life
Huh.
and rearranging it to a way that where you are playing a better role.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I feel like books are one of those things where they're good for you at the right times. So I'm not sure if this book's good for me at the right time, but I thought I'd give it a shot. I'm a couple chapters in. We'll see if I
Well, let
finish
me
it.
let me flip it. What's a favorite book for you?
Um, I like There's a book by Ben Horowitz. It's called The Hard Things About Hard Things. It's all about building businesses and everything like that. He runs the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz.
Oh,
It's a
okay. That
so
Horowitz. Okay.
yeah, exactly, Ben Horowitz. So he's a pretty successful guy.
Sure.
Yeah, so that was one of my favorite books. And I haven't finished Principles by what's his name, the
Oh, Ray Dalio.
Ray Dalio. Yeah, that was a great book. It's a great book, but it's very, very long. It's extremely long. But yeah, I think I'm about like 75%, and it's just it's good, but it's like hundreds and hundreds of chapters.
Jeez.
But those are two
There's a
good
lot of
books.
principles. Okay.
Yeah, two good books to me at least.
Cool.
Nick, if you have any final words, let us know if you have any final words of advice to people, and also where they can find you.
You bet. I mean, final words of advice. It's all just an experiment. I mean, that's what all these projects really started out as. Like, here, I'm going to try something out. Maybe it gets traction, maybe it doesn't. Um, but that kind of has, at least in my mind, positioned it such that it would lessen the sting of the inevitable failures that come along the way. So it's like, well, the experiment just didn't work out how I had hoped. I didn't ever put all my eggs into one basket, or made a bet that I couldn't afford to lose. So it's just like, hey, let's try something, see what happens. Where to find me? SideHustleNation.com. Of course, we'd love to have you tune into the Side Hustle Show podcast, available in iTunes, Overcast, wherever podcasts are sold. And then sidehustlenation.com/ideas is kind of the pillar post to start with a big laundry list of ideas if you're on the fence looking for something to get started.
Nice. Thanks a lot for your time this evening, Nick.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
See you. Okay.